Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. President Trump's showdown with the Iranian regime just ramped up. Earlier today, U.S. forces shot down an Iranian drone in the Persian Gulf as it approached a U.S. aircraft carrier in a threatening manner. Also, 6 Iranian gunboats attempted to harass a U.S. flagged tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, those gunboats fled once the U.S. Navy showed up, but clearly things are heating up and the Iranian regime is on the brink. President Trump vowed Monday that, quote, very bad things will happen for Iran's mullahs if they do not agree to a deal with the United States. Folks, I think it is very unlikely that Iran will do a deal, so you do the math. Now, that's the latest out of the Middle East, but meanwhile, here in the United States, the left continues to attack and demonize ICE agents nationwide. It's a dangerous moment. And President Trump and his team are working around the clock to make America safer and more secure, both at home and abroad. Earlier today, I talked to a key member of that team, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to President Trump and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council. He joined me from the White House to break down those threats at home and abroad and why they matter to you. Take a look. Director Gorka, always great to see you. Hey, this past weekend marked the 47th anniversary of the Ayatollah Khomeini returning to Iran from exile. And now, Dr. Gorka, half a century practically later, the Iranian regime has never been weaker. It seems they're teetering on the brink. What part is the weakening of the regime? How much can we attribute to President Trump using peace through strength and using the leverage to, again, put the Ayatollahs on the ropes?
Well, I think there's 2 key factors or contributors to the current reality of the murderous mullahs regime being on the brink, as you say, and that's the brave people of Persia, Iranians and others, the minorities included, who are standing up for their rights, who want to see the end of that absolutely tragically murderous regime. But even more than that, it's the president. Why? Because we don't have Obama or Biden in the White House literally sending pallets of cash to the regime. We don't acquiesce to the mullahs and to their demands with the JCPOA Iran deal. No, the president takes action when he sees a national security threat to the United States. He was very clear in that letter we can now openly talk about at the beginning of his administration that he sent to the Ayatollah. He said, we will not permit you to acquire nuclear weapons. And secondly, we will not permit you to continue to fund and support deadly proxies across the region. And the decisive acts such as Midnight Hammer, which if you read, Eric, I mean, look, if you and I had read that in a Tom Clancy novel 10 years ago, we would have said, no, absolutely impossible. That stealth bombers fly from, the mainland of the United States all the way into Iran, penetrate Iranian airspace, drop dozens of massive penetrator bombs on their nuclear facilities, then turn around and leave Iranian airspace without a shot being fired. We would have said, no, absolutely impossible. So, no, it's primarily the president, peace through strength, and also, God bless them, the brave people of the nation of Persia.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time in 47 years that this regime is really being held accountable. And by the way, Director Gorka, look, some are saying, well, Iran's not a direct threat to the United States. Could you break down for everyone how Iran is very much a threat to the U.S.? And I think first and foremost, those assassination plots the regime hatched against President Trump in the run-up to the 2024 election.
Yeah, there are, given that our work here in the Counterterrorism Directorate is mostly in the classified arena, there are limits to what I can share. But if you go into open source, if you go into, the public information that's available out there, you can talk about the hundreds of Americans who were killed by Iran. That is why President Trump took out Soleimani, General Soleimani, in that exquisite operation during the first Trump administration, because not only of the hundreds of American servicemen who were killed by the Iranian regime and its affiliates and its proxies, but because of the 600 U.S. servicemen and women he was planning to kill as the man in charge of the Iranian proxies in the region. But you're absolutely right. It's not just about things happening thousands of miles away to our servicemen. It's also about the plots here in the United States. Plots that we know were targeting leaders key members of the first Trump administration, and also dissidents, Iranian dissidents on the streets of the United States, Jewish Americans likewise, Israelis. So the fact is, the threat of Iran is a global threat. And I'll just state this. The Democrat State Department stated this years ago. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. I've traveled the region since I became Senior Director for Counterterrorism. Every time I scratch a terrorist threat, whether I'm in Lebanon, whether I'm in Iraq or anywhere else, I see what? Soon enough, the hands of Iran and the mullahs and the regime, the IRGC, MOIS, the Quds Force, is usually the basis of all the serious threats in the region and when it comes to terrorism writ large.
So true. The head of the snake, no doubt, when it comes to global jihad. And another major player going back decades, of course, is the Muslim Brotherhood in that regard. Now, President Trump recently designated several Muslim Brotherhood branches as terror organizations, banned them essentially. Director Gorka, tell us why that was such an important move.
Yeah, please go and read, if you missed this tectonically historic moment, read my piece in Breitbart just 2 weeks ago. Read the president's executive order. It was one of my team members that drafted this for the president. Should have happened decades ago. No president had the spine to do this. The Muslim Brotherhood is the progenitor of all modern jihadi organizations from 1928 forward, including Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Hamas. The president has designated the original Egyptian chapter as a foreign terrorist organization, including the Jordanian chapter as well, and the Lebanese. It's just the beginning for all those people out there who are fake MAGA and who wish to criticize the president. He took historic action. This is phase 1. Phase 2 will include more chapters, but it should have happened decades ago. But we had to wait for President Trump to take this act, which opens a whole panoply of weapons to Scott Bessent at the Treasury, to Pam Bondi at the DOJ, and to everyone else who's working counterterrorism across the United States government, but only because of President Trump's decisive action.
Yeah, it's a major historic move, no doubt. As you said, the Brotherhood is really the granddaddy of them all when it comes to Islamic terror groups. We see madness right now, Director Gorka, and it seems to me to be a pretty legitimate terror threat as well. Not only a criminal action, but these are domestic terrorists who are attacking ICE agents and coordinating, it seems, very closely in Minneapolis and other cities. The American people voted for criminal illegals to be deported. That's exactly what President Trump is doing, what ICE is doing. Can you talk more about the madness we're seeing in the streets and what the administration is doing to get a handle on that?
So let me just reiterate what you just said. Almost 2/3 of the U.S. population, that's more than voted for the president when he won the election, wished to see all illegals deported. Not just the rapists, not just the human traffickers, the child molesters, all illegals removed from the country. What you're seeing right now is the ripping off of the mask of the left. When you have Democrat politicians, leaders, activists, billionaires funding the demonstrations and saying, well, these people are all Americans and have a right to be here, or they're attacking and organizing on these signal chat message boards, the aggravated actions that are meant to demoralize the ICE agents, to make the work of HSI and CBP impossible. You see what the left has become. They're on the side of these groups. They're on the side of the cartels, which, just like the Muslim Brotherhood, this was day one of the Trump administration. President Trump designated 11 cartels and international narco gangs as terrorists. So we are on the side of America and Americans, of the innocent people who had their lives taken from them, or the angel mothers who had their children taken from them, those that lost loved ones because of fentanyl overdoses brought into the nation by the cartels. We're on the side of those Americans. Those you see on the streets protesting ICE, or the useful idiots at the Grammys, these people are on the side of the cartels. But relax, here's the good news. Could you imagine, Eric, a better team that this pincer movement of Tom Homan? Elon Musk said to me one day, "Wow, that guy straight out of Central Casting, absolutely." The man who's been doing this for 6 presidents for 40 years. And then on the other side, the really important nub of the issue, the funding. Scott Bessent on the warpath from Treasury to actually find out who's really bankrolling these anarchists. Those two together, adding Governor Noam, adding Stephen Miller, and woe betide the anarchists, because they're going to be in a world of hurt.
It's a dream team that's been assembled. And can you talk more about this being the worst of the worst? I mean, these operations in Minneapolis and elsewhere, we're talking pedophiles, murderers, rapists. We see the propaganda, as you mentioned, at the Grammys and from the Democrat Party, but these are violent criminals and terrorists who ICE is rounding up and deporting.
Yeah, look, God bless Caroline Levitt, who I think, every press conference she's had in recent weeks has mentioned the names of these individuals, like Jocelyn Nungare, like Rachel Moran. These mothers, these young girls, in Jocelyn's case, a teenager who was raped, strangled, and thrown into a ditch. What kind of human being is on the side of the illegal who was let into America by the Biden-Harris administration and who we are now removing from the streets? I mean, the fact that Jocelyn Nungare isn't a national story on the front cover of every daily in the United States, that they don't have documentary specials on CNN or MSNBC, tells you whose side they are on. They are anti-American entities. They are in league with those who are trying to dismantle America, starting with our borders, but going all the way through the indoctrination of our schools, the mainstream media, exploitation of social media as well. This is the time to make your voice heard and stand up for the truth and stand up for the innocents. President Trump, I've seen this now. I've known him for 10 years, 11 years. His primary concern, whether it's peace deals in Sharm el-Sheikh, whether it's building the border, is to protect the innocent and to stop violence. If you're against that, you need to look into your soul and identify the darkness that resides there.
No doubt. This is a battle literally between good and evil. And by the way, the good news is, as you mentioned, we have the most secure border in American history, number one. And number two, and people really need to know this, murder rates have plummeted to historic lows during President Trump's first year back in office. Across the board, crime is way down. Can you talk more about that, how President Trump and his team have brought law and order back to the United States?
It's just common sense. Everything we do in the Trump administration is driven by common sense. If it works, do more of it. If it doesn't work, if it's against the U.S. interest, stop it. And we're just following the lead of great Americans, a dear friend of the president, America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who turned around New York. My wife lived in New York before Rudy Giuliani. It was a hellhole. What he did when he became mayor with the great people who supported him, Bernie Kerik and others, tells you what happens when rule of law is shown to be important for the leaders of our institutions. Let me just tell you about the city I work in, Washington, D.C. The last year of the Biden administration, and if your viewers don't believe me, I'm not surprised. Go online and check the statistics. The last year of the Biden administration, in a 12-month period, we had 900 carjackings in Washington, D.C. Eric, Washington isn't a big city. It's 600,000 people. One of those car hijackings was in daylight at 4 p.m. when an armed FBI agent had her vehicle stolen from her at gunpoint, just blocks from the Biden White House. Now we live in a different America. More than 90% drop in not only murders but violent crimes. The fact that people feel safe walking the streets of the nation's capital, that's down to one man leading from behind the Resolute desk, and his name is President Donald J. Trump.
Director Gorka, President Trump, rightfully, is turning up the heat on the communist regime in Cuba, just 90 miles from our southern coast. Give us the latest update on why the president is ratcheting up the heat on Cuba, and what a game changer it would be if that regime in Havana were to be shown the exit.
So This, again, is an example of common sense. And I strongly, strongly recommend all of your viewers, Eric, read the president's words himself from the primary source. Just over a month ago, he published the National Security Strategy, which is the highest document of its type. It bears his signature. It's unclassified, and it explains exactly why we're doing what we're doing with our brave Department of War assets, with the Coast Guard, with the FBI, the ship interdictions, the drug boat strikes. It's the Monroe Doctrine rewritten and updated for the 21st century, as the president calls it, the Don Roe Doctrine, which is, again, common sense. What happens in your neighborhood matters to you. If you live on a street and there's a drug den next door, if there's a hive of illicit activity three houses down, that affects the safety of your home, your children, and everyone in that neighborhood. We will not permit nations in our hemisphere, and let's talk about Venezuela, which is the clearest example, to be involved in the poisoning of Americans with the drugs that are taken by those fast boats towards the United States, or we won't permit them to house inimical regimes on their soil, be it Hezbollah, Iran, China, Russia, getting up to nefarious activities literally in our backyard. So whether it's Cuba, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's anyone else in our hemisphere, we will not permit you to take actions that threaten the lives of all Americans, whether or not you voted for the president. This isn't political. This is about the national security of all Americans.
No doubt, it's our own backyard. And speaking of the West writ large, we look across the pond at Europe right now, and President Trump called them on the carpet, rightfully, at Davos 2 weeks ago. Mass migration, mostly Islamic, is changing the face of Europe. How concerned should we be about this, Director Gorka? I look at the UK and some of the madness happening there right now. Across the board, Europe seems to be teetering in many ways. And the United States, under President Trump, seems to be the last line of defense for the Judeo-Christian West. Will Europe get a wake-up call soon?
Well, look, go back. Everybody needs to watch the president's speech again at Davos, the masterclass. Watch Vice President Vance's first speech in Munich at the beginning of the administration, calling out the Europeans for civilizational decline that they're committing themselves. The president has woken them up. I think things are turning around for the better, whether it's the Brexit vote, whether it's the government of Maloney or others. And I can't give any names, but I had a meeting last week with a very senior European official who used, I almost fell off my chair, Eric, used the phrase, migration has been weaponized against the nations of Europe. And when you have a senior counterterrorism relevant European official use that language, you know the president is having an effect. You know that our policies are finally waking up the European elites to what they have committed against their own people for nigh on 40 years now. So there's a lot of work to be done. I don't recognize the UK, the land of my birth, when I go back there, but there's enough common sense speaking through, thanks, in most part, to President Trump.
Yeah, that is encouraging, number one. And number two, it is the Trump effect, as you said. No mistake about it. Director Gorka, thanks so much. God bless. Keep up the great work. Folks, be sure to follow him on X, Instagram, across social media. Director Sebastian Gorka, great to see you as always. God bless. See you again soon. Great stuff there with Sebastian Gorka. Again, Deputy Assistant to President Trump and the Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council. Folks, if you like that interview, you want to see more like it, be sure to check out my nightly show on TBN. It's called Stackleback Tonight. It airs on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network, every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We've also got a Stackleback Tonight YouTube channel here. Yeah, we've got 2 YouTube channels. You can subscribe to the channel as well to see clips from the show. Of course, subscribe to this channel. We just passed 1.1 million subscribers for such a time as this. Big thanks to you all and to God for getting us there. And folks, we will be watching this week. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell, because you'll get the alert when we come live. We're watching the latest on the showdown in the Middle East. Again, that U.S. Armada, as President Trump calls it, is surrounding Iran right now. Talks are scheduled, or should I say, were scheduled to be in Ankara, Turkey on Friday between the U.S. and Iran. But now, as Iran is prone to do, they're trying to change the venue, maybe move the talks to Oman, another country. They want bilateral talks. Typical games by the master chess players in the Iranian regime. But for the first time in the nearly half century since this wicked regime came to power, they're being checkmated by President Trump. They've never faced a U.S. president or really any world leader in the West like Trump, who takes on the Iranian regime head on, who does not back down, who does not appease, who holds them accountable. And now that regime, because of President Trump, exercising in real time peace through strength. He's got all the leverage in the world, and he's not afraid to use it. Because of that, and because of Israel, of course, and strong leadership from Bibi Netanyahu, a pair of Churchills, he and President Trump working together. Now, the end result, the Iranian regime is on the brink of destruction and being cast into the ash heap of history where it belongs. Lesson here, peace through strength always works. Hey, we're watching everything in the Middle East really close, so keep it right here. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us. God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.